Get the tie straight here. All right. All right. All right. We got a couple of minutes. I've got an interview that's about to come down, but I wanted to throw a quick 15-minute Periscope to just explain this to everybody, put all of your questions to rest. And I've got it in the title here above to sort of explain how this works. I've got the the McCabe testimony open, as well as a copy, my copy of Andrew McCabe's book. So he put out his book called The Threat. And huge hat tip to Dan Bongino, who pointed out the chapter in this. I'd read it before, but I hadn't gone back to it since it came out last year, about a year plus ago. I believe it came out in February of 19. And so let's break this all down for everybody, because I see people who don't understand how SIGINT works, and FISA collections and masking and unmasking. And I want to walk people through it a little bit, because there was a masking that went on here and an unmasking or minimization, SMP, standard minimization procedures. I'm going to try to walk you through, because a lot of jargon, right? There's a lot of jargon from the Intel community. We use a lot of jargon. It is what it is. But fortunately, I speak fluent Intel because, as I've told you 1.5 million times, and it's right up there on my Twitter bio, right here, information warfare officer. That's what that is. They don't just hand these out like candy. You know what I'm saying? So here's what Andrew McCabe wrote in his book. So they're talking about the sanctions that were placed on Russia at the end of the Obama administration back in December, on December 29th. If you remember, December 29th, of course, is the same day that Kislyak calls Flynn. So here we go. I'm reading directly from Andrew McCabe's book. The sanctions were announced on December 29th. The next day, Russia's President Vladimir Putin issued an unusual and uncharacteristic statement, saying that he would take no action against the United States in retaliation for those sanctions. The PDB staff decided to write an intelligence assessment as to why Putin made the choice he did. So the PDB is the President's Daily Brief, and that is a briefing that's given to the president every day. Obama preferred his by iPad. He'd like to read the full articles. And then, but then Clapper would sometimes come on for what's called a walk-on brief, or an add-on to the end of that. Whereas President Trump prefers it to be oral. He just prefers the oral briefing. Okay. So the PDB staff, and an assessment means your informed opinion. That's your informed opinion as a member of the Intel community as to why something in the world is happening and what they think. So it's their idea, right? It's their idea, their opinion. It's their opinion. Keep in mind, it's informed by intelligence, but it's still an opinion. That's why it's called an assessment. All right, it's an assessment. It's not fact. It's not evidence. It's based on facts and evidence. And obviously, if you have a good assessment, you want to back that up, but it's still your opinion as to why things are going the way they're going. So they issued a request to the IC. Anyone who had information on the topic was invited to offer it for consideration. In response to that request, the FBI queried our own holdings. Hint, hint, holdings. What does the FBI run? FISA warrants. Okay? So if the FBI is running FISA warrants, that would be their own holdings. Who do they have a FISA on? Sergei Kislyak. He's the ambassador from Russia. Okay? That's standard practice. Got a FISA on it. So they queried their own holdings. We came across information indicating that General Mike Flynn, the president-elect's nominee for the post of National Security Advisor, had held several conversations with the Russian ambassador to the U.S., Sergei Kislyak, in which the sanctions were discussed. So if you have the content, right, if you have the content, that means it's not just a DNR or a pen register that would give you the metadata. If you have the contents of the phone call, that means there's FISA involved right here. He's telling you that between, sort of if you know how to read between the lines. So if you have the content of the call, that means Kislyak was on FISA. This information was something we had from December 29th. I had not been aware of it. This is McCabe again. My impression was that higher level officials within the FBI's counterintelligence division had not been aware of it. FBI Counterintelligence Division was run by who? Bill Priestap and Peter Strzok, right? Bill Priestap and Peter Strzok. We remember those names, of course. Obviously, we remember Strzok. The PDB request brought it to our attention because remember, they're always collecting. They're always collecting on this stuff. They're always collecting, and so it's what it is the higher level isn't sitting there reading every transcript, but they're going to go back to an analyst and say, hey, what do we have on this call around this date? And they say, oh, we got him calling this guy. An analyst shared it with me. I shared it with Comey. Comey shared it with the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, and Clapper verbally briefed it to Barack Obama. So there you go, right there. The analyst to McCabe, McCabe to Comey, Comey to Clapper, Clapper to Obama. There's your answer, right there. Wrote it in his book. Many people were trying to figure out what to make of this. After high-level discussion at the relevant agencies and at Justice Loretta Lynch, the question arose, was this a violation of the Logan Act, unconstitutional act? The Logan Act, passed by Congress in 1799, Adams administration, prohibits private citizens from negotiating with foreign governments that have disputes with the U.S. Was Flynn a private citizen? No, he was not. He was the incoming national security advisor. He had been appointed by President Trump. He was a member of the transition team. To describe him as a private citizen is foolish, idiotic, wrong, and dumb, right? Just dumb. But then again, this is Andrew McCabe we're talking about. The FBI's position was that we should consider this possible violation in addition to our continuing inquiries into General Flynn. So the continuing inquiries, we now know that to be Crossfire Razor. That was the CI investigation, which, by the way, they were already about to close. So keep in mind, they were about to close the CI investigation. We know they were about to close the investigation called Crossfire Razor into Flynn until all of this went down. And once all of this went down, that's when Peter Strzok goes back and says, no, we have to continue the investigation into Flynn because of these, again, I stress, completely legal conversations that he held with the ambassador from Russia. We felt we needed more. I'm going to do McCabe's voice here. We felt we needed time to do more work to understand the context of what had been found. We don't just run out and charge someone based on a single piece of intelligence. They actually did do that, so that's a lie. We use intelligence as the basis for investigation. No, you didn't. You just wanted to go after Flynn because you're a jerk. So then we also saw a piece in McCabe's testimony that was released the other day that said that sort of added a little bit more color, a little bit more detail to that what we got from our holdings, and that was the phrase tech cuts. So they received tech cuts from the FBI analyst, and it actually does say analyst. So it could have been an NSA analyst as well. So that's distinct without a difference in this case because some analyst who was involved in the whole thing was bringing it from the technical collection side to the higher ups. So to McCabe, to Comey to Clapper to Obama, right? And so what is the difference between masking and unmasking then? So the technical collection, if he got it directly from the analyst, since it was a cut, which means it's not a full transcript, means that it wouldn't have been masked. And that's what McCabe says in his testimony. Go read the Epoch Times on this. So he admits in his testimony that the cuts, which means that's like the clip, that's the specific clip, or it's a gist, is another way we refer to it. It just means that clip wasn't already masked because they were getting the raw information. They were getting the raw information from the FISA wiretap. And so later on, it seems that after that briefing, so Clapper verbally briefs it to Barack Obama, at which point it seems like, based on everything that we now know from the unmasking requests, that Obama probably said, get me that full transcript. And then so when Obama says, get me that full transcript, that's when they're going through and making the formal unmasking request. So you see, they followed a sort of informal process. So there was an informal RFI, request for information, from the PDB staff regarding these phone calls between Kislyak and anyone. any information on sanctions. They pull that out. They get the raw tech cut from the analyst. They brief that up the chain, go straight to Obama. Obama says, "Get me the full transcript." At that point, and it's probably Dennis McDonough, who that's the unmasking request we see on January 5th. So this is 5 days later. That's probably 6 days later, and that's probably the request that we see there when Obama says, "Get me the full transcript." So that's the unmasking request that's made. So originally, they didn't need to unmask because they got the information directly. But then when they needed the full information, when they wanted the full transcript, that's when they made the unmasking request. Does anybody have any questions on that? Because I've just walked you now through the entire process and how it works. So the full transcript means, now if the analyst, by the way, back on his or her side, if you've got the deputy director of the FBI who's now digging into this and asking you for something, you're probably going to go ahead and work up the entire transcript at that point, because you know that, hey, the deputy director, the number 2 of FBI, just asked me about this, and oh, by the way, it's for the PDB, and you know that the P in PDB stands for what? What does the P in PDB stand for? Just so that we can all understand, just so I can make sure that you're all paying attention. What does the P in PDB stand for? Anyone? I'm seeing a few people in the comments get it. We're live, and I apologize for people who aren't. It doesn't. Someone said peanut butter. No, it does not stand for peanut butter. President, right? President, the president. Presidential, right? Presidential daily briefing. So the P stands for president. So the P means that it's going to the president. So that means this is being given presidential level attention. So if you've got the president's ear, you're probably going to pay a little more attention to what it is you got, and then you've got a full transcript because you probably know that you're going to be asked for it. If you get pinged once with the president, you're going to go ahead and drill down on that phone call. I say, oh, there's something about this phone call with Kislyak and Flynn that they're very interested in. Let's make sure that we go through all this and dig it up. Is this illegal? No, it's not illegal. This is part of the intelligence process. This is part of the intelligence cycle. The FISA warrant was done on Kislyak. This was a legal FISA warrant. It went through the FISA court. Flynn called Kislyak. McCabe then he kind of recounts later on, and this is the part where I'm not sure if you take it with a grain of salt, right? So it's McCabe says that Flynn said. So McCabe says that he called Flynn and said, I told him that people were curious about his conversation with Kislyak, and then Flynn replied, "You know what I said because you guys were probably listening," right? So. So what's illegal here is the leak. And what's unethical here is that they targeted Flynn under the Logan Act. What's unethical is the targeting of Flynn under the Logan Act. Okay, that's unethical because we know this is false pretenses, right? Flynn was not a private citizen. He was the incoming national security advisor. By the way, the Logan Act is probably unconstitutional anyway. It is a vestige of the Adams administration and is something that's never really been seriously considered under any DOJ prosecution. So that's what's unethical, and that's what people are calling for an investigation into. And the president, of course, has referred to as Obamagate. What was illegal, what is specific, as far as we know, the specific illegality here is the leak of this information to the Washington Post, and it looks like it may have been to the New Yorker as well. Any other quick questions? But the New Yorker didn't run it. Any other quick questions? Because I do have to run. I have an interview, but I'm just trying to break this down as quick as possible. What was unethical was the targeting of Flynn under the Logan Act, which we already know. What was illegal, right? What was illegal is the leak, right? And we don't know, by the way. We still don't really know who the leak is because of Grinnell and what he did. What Grinnell released is all the people who could have had access to Flynn. And that list, by the way, indicates that there were more calls unmasked that may have involved Flynn's identity. So that was a list of people who may have, this is the whodunit, right? These are your suspects, right? If you think of it as like a game of Clue, these are your suspects. So who did it, right? Where did they do it? So I really just want to walk all the way through. Will the press be protected? Yes. The press is protected under the First Amendment for this. The press is not the one who leaked it, right? So David Ignatius of the Washington Post didn't leak this, but whoever gave that information to Ignatius committed a felony. And that was a felony leak of General Flynn's phone call and a felony leak of the contents of that phone call, plus the fact that the surveillance existed in the first place, all of which are leaks, all of which are illegal. So Grinnell is giving you the roadmap of figuring out how this leak took place, because these are all the people who may have had that information. And of course, we also see from McCabe's own words, and that's why I wanted to read from his book, and had to, again, to Dan Bongino on that for bringing this up this morning, that he said there was an analyst. The analyst gave it to McCabe. McCabe gave it to Comey. Comey gave it to Clapper. Clapper gave it to Obama, right? That's your chain. That's your chain. And none of that was masked. None of that information was masked. So there's the formal unmasking requests, right? Those are the formal unmasking requests. But anybody who was in that room when Clapper briefed Obama, which probably would have included Joe Biden, because we're talking about one of these briefings, and we know that that Biden sat in on the Obama PDPs and these briefings, that anybody who had access to that room at that time would have also heard Clapper briefing the president on that. So it's not like a one person brief kind of thing. Like you have a bunch of people. Could they just ask the reporter? They have, but as most reporters don't reveal their sources, so there you go. Could it have been Ben Rhodes? Could have been Susan Rice? I'm sure all of them were either in the room or were privy to the information, of course, because they were part of the national security team. Did Schiff know all this? I don't think that we know definitively, but you could probably, and it probably would be a safe assumption that Schiff did know that. Yes. Okay. All right, so this is the information that we have. I've walked everybody through all this. People are asking who leaked it. We don't know yet. We are trying to dig that out. We are trying to find out. I've got an interview that I'm now late for. Catch you on the flip side. Please pass this podcast out to everybody that you see asking questions about this situation to understand how it worked. The leak is the crime. The targeting was unethical because of the Logan Act, right? We know the Logan Act is unconstitutional, and we know that Flynn was not a private citizen. Understand the situation now? Have a great day. Ladies and gentlemen, you have my permission to lay ashore.